was stuck on 0 for ages. I was about to message you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, because the YouTube was, maybe the YouTube is lagging.
Maybe. Good evening.
Hello, everyone.
Pushing dit here.
Welcome back.
To our second live stream. I was going to say of the month, but it's not the second of the month. It's just our second live stream, the first one for June. How is everyone? I'm in the chat on TikTok, so if I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at my phone, just to check the comments on there.
Yes, well, I'm gonna keep going in and out, so TikTok and YouTube, but yeah, welcome everyone. I think we were a bit more organized.
I know, a bit more prepared. Leo even had intro music. She even put you all in a waiting room. We love you too, B. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yes, we found some I found like a little Albanian inspired song, and I was like, yep, this is going in the countdown, and you guys are all being
maybe one day we'll get a famous artist to sponsor the beginning.
Can you imagine?
Could you imagine? How amazing would that be?
God. One day we will just have to manifest it.
So for those of you who are coming back, thank you so much for joining us once again in our second live stream of this series. I have nothing to do with the organisation of this. This is all completely Leo's baby. I just come here and spout and just talk like yap. And that's it. Leo does all the rest of the work. So all this credit goes to her. Thank you, Leo, for making
I am
happen.
the engineer.
I tell everyone I can't do anything when Leona come like if you take off my arm, you're taking off Leo.
Yes, exactly.
Hey Nina, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nina, because this one over here was like, oh my god, I look so bad.
I'm not used to having my hair straight. I don't often have my hair straight.
Yeah.
But I washed my hair yesterday and it wasn't in the plan to wear my hair curly because I'm like hair training. I'm putting loads of oils and products in my hair to make it look all nice and luscious because I lost a bunch of hair for a while. But it's coming back now. I'm taking vitamins every day. I'm doing all of my hair oils. So I've got a whole routine. And today there was no plan to have it nice. So now it looks like this. Anyway.
So you've just got
We're good to go.
Us. Geordie Bell, American here. Love watching your videos and learning about your culture. Thanks for sharing and supporting other women. You welcome.
Oh, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. What is it with us after our 20s? We decide to, when we hit our 30s, our knees start to hurt, our joints start to hurt, and we're like, we need to get vitamins. My hair is falling out. When I was 21, I was like, who gives a shit? Like, I'm gonna live forever.
That's what I was saying yesterday. Look, like the amount of money I'm willing to spend on decent skincare products is actually abysmal. In my 20s, do you think I gave a shit about skincare? I was invincible. I was going to be immortal forever. I didn't need skincare. I went and bought like the most expensive makeup, which I should have been doing the complete opposite. So girlies, in your 20s, don't fall for that propaganda. Go and get yourself some nice skin creams. Have a good skincare.
Yeah.
And you're going to be fine. You don't need the makeup. If I could go back, that's what I would do differently.
The makeup I used to wear the Collection Mousse foundation. And I used to wear it for work. It's so bad. This is so bad. And just apply it with my fingers. I was like, who's this fresh girl? Like it felt, now looking back at it, I think of myself.
We all went through it though. We all put foundation on our fingers like
literally, this. Just literally. And then I used to come home with dry skin and just think that was normal, and like the thickest eyeliner I could ever do.
I know. I'm telling you, the girlies today would absolutely die at the way we used to apply makeup. Yeah, but don't worry, we did evolve. We promised we evolved. We evolved to beauty sponges. We evolved to brushes. Everything. We did it all. We promised. We caught up. We caught up.
And now eyebrows.
Cool. I know, and now we like to be me in my mid-30s. I'm like as natural as possible now.
Or
like,
naturale,
exactly. You're shedding light on something that needs to be heard. Thank you for using your voice. Thank you so much, Leona. I just wanted to say that what you're doing is truly powerful. Thank you. What is the one thing? Oh, that's a comment. I mean, that's a question we might keep till the end. Some said, what is one thing you would tell your younger self if you had the chance to? Maybe we'll end it with that one, because Leo has she's going to introduce the video that we're going to be doing today. So I will let you take over.
Yes, and just before I do, you Black Flag No Name, please re-comment that, resend us that comment again, because we'll probably forget. So please send that again.
Yeah, definitely.
Send it again. I don't know if we can pin it, but send it again, please. Just before 9 o'clock, which is
the boss mic. My friend's in here. Hey, babes, the boss mic. Are we not the boss?
Love that
we
name.
are the boss.
I love that name. Know. Okay, let's jump into this because we've just waffled so much.
I know.
Okay. We're going to play this.
Do you want to tell them a little bit about the video, like what it is?
Yeah, so this video, it was taken in Lipian, the only women's prison in Kosove currently, and they're interviewing actually women in prison about their experiences and everything they've kind of gone through within the prison. And we thought it was such a great video, and the comments especially, you know, we come for the comments.
We came for the comments.
We came because we saw that and we were like, yep, we have to talk about this with our Trime community, because the comments are pretty much all bullshit, but we wanted to talk about it because there's a lot of misogyny, but there's a lot of failure from the institutions that are there to actually protect these women and that are there to actually help these women develop themselves and get out and then actually, you know, continue their life. So we thought it was such a great video to kind of give our, not only just our opinion, because we've done a lot of research. Well, this is where Lejla comes in, and she's done a whole deep dive.
I went deep. I went down. I went down as much of a rabbit hole as I could, given the limited amount of research that's actually available. But I did go down a good few rabbit holes.
Yes. So I think we're going to watch like maybe a minute of it, maybe 30 seconds to just give you guys an idea. I'm sure a lot of people have actually watched this video and seen it because it went pretty viral. But we'll watch about 30 seconds of it, and then we'll do a bit of the comments, and then actually we might just keep watching bits of the video
as we go.
As we go. So we'll go ahead and play this, and then I will stop it at 30 seconds.
Hey Cupcake, had to get that in quickly.
Hey Cupcake, miss you. I haven't seen you in ages.
Olem përgjam që një mbet muj, mun kanë meta dhe një vjetë një muj.
Brenda këtyre mureve të trasha betoni, ku heshtja shpesh ka zëmë të fortë se britma, jetojnë gra me histori të ndryshme, por me një të përbashkët, dënime. Por edhe këtu në burgun e grave në Lipian, jeta nuk ndalet. Një ekran I bardhë bëhet dritare drejt botës, kinemaja, aty ku gratë për pak qaste harrojnë realitetin, e gjenë vetën në histori të tjera, e që ndonjëherë qeshin për herë të parë pas shumë kohësh.
Shall I keep going?
No, I think like that's enough to get us started.
Yeah.
If there's any like English speaking people listening here, this clip is just pretty much interviewing. It's a very short clip, obviously part of a bigger documentary, and it's interviewing the two women who are in the Lipian prison, and they're just sharing some of their experiences of what it's like to be in this prison. So I have to complete disclosure and preface this, and this is my opinion and my opinion only, and Leo is more than welcome to disagree with me. But before I begin this, I have to very much preface I support women's rights and wrongs. And I'm going to explain to you all exactly why, because I was watching this, right, and whilst this clip, and I'm sure the documentary isn't itself promoting any forms of violence and misogyny towards women, but I started thinking about what are the actual statistics and like in the disparity towards the prison population between men, women and young people, so juveniles. And I found some research, because you know me and you, the good little academics that we are. We love a little bit of research.
We are professors.
We absolutely are. What would Trime be if we did not come with the facts, right?
Cool, catastrophe.
So I went and found some research, and again, it is very limited, but I did my absolute best. And there is research from the World Prison Brief. I should also do another disclaimer here, because it sounds like we're solely focusing on just the statistics back home. Now, the reason for that is because there is no research available for diaspored women like this. Nothing. There's no research available for gender-based violence for Albanian women in diaspored, let alone something to do with the prison population. I could tell you the prison population of Albanians in general, for example, in England or Wales, but I couldn't tell you what the disparity is between men and women and young people in that. So anyway, this piece of research that was carried out in Kosovo and Albania, so they've got two different, slightly different stats, and it tells us a little bit more about the systemic patterns, if that's what you want to call it, and like the cultural responses to crime, and really who bears the brunt of the criminal justice system in the countries back home. And I truly do wish that we had this research for us in the diaspora, but we don't. So we're just going to kind of dive deep into the prison population. So, for example, in Albania, so this study was carried out both in Albania and Kosovo. So in Albania, the total prison population sits at around 4,650 people. This was as of 2023. So it's not today, 2025, but it was as of 2023. And in Kosovo, the number was a little bit lower, 1,709. Now, you have to understand that the populations are different. So we've got a much smaller population in Kosovo. So this is all very relative to actually the population size. But the inmates is obviously more than double in Albania than it is in Kosovo. Again, it's relative. So please bear that in mind as we discuss this and we break down the statistics and numbers a little bit more. So when we talk about the gender disparity in both countries, these studies showed that men actually made up the vast majority of prisons. So in Albania, it was 98.7 inmates were men. So excuse me, I had pizza just before we came on live, so my body's still digesting it. So that was around 4,500 men, 4,500, 4,600 men, and only 1.3% of that were women. So 1.3% of that prison population were women, which made up for around 60 women. Now in Kosove, the breakdown was really similar. It was 98.2% were men, with 2.7% being women, which amounted to around 50 women in prison, right? So whilst the percentage is a little bit higher than Albania, again, as I say, it's relative. So it's 60 women in Albania, 50 women in Kosovo. I think what this really shows us is a little bit more about the social trends, that obviously these numbers clearly state that men are the overwhelming ones that are criminalized back home, convicted and in prison. But it also kind of raises this question about how gendered roles and how the economic vulnerability really plays a huge part in our criminal justice system, right? And how it's structured in both of our home countries. There was also a small percentage, I need to add that in there, there was also a really small percentage of young people and juveniles. So in Albania, it was 0.5% were minors, so under 18, which made up for around 23 minors. And in Kosovo, it was 1.3%, which made up for around 22 minors. And so although the fewer total inmates were in Kosovo, it actually ended up having a higher percentage of juvenile prisoners, which was interesting. Nothing to do with women, but it was just interesting, something that I noted down. And I think this might just probably be a huge note towards how the justice system works differently in Albania and Kosovo in terms of like incarcerating youth. So what I really wanted to break, I told you I went down a whole rabbit hole with this, right? Because what I really wanted to break down was more so around the conviction rates around men and women and the occupancy rate and its infrastructure. So in Albania, it's operating at around 90% capacity, which means that it's full, but not quite yet overburdened. And in Kosovo, it was 66.6%. Now, please, as I say these numbers, please remember that this is all proportional to the level of population that we have back home. So just suggests that actually in Kosovo there's more space for more prisoners. However, that doesn't mean that we don't have an issue with crime. It probably means that crime isn't being handled in the way that it should be, right? So obviously this is telling us really very, very obvious things, that men dominate the prison population overwhelmingly, and that women and juveniles are incarcerated in very small numbers. I then went even further into this because I thought, okay, if 98% of the prison population is taken up by men, both in both countries back home, how many of these numbers are actually as a direct result of domestic abuse? So the OCSE, because I'll always mess that up. The OCSE reported that in Kosovo, only 22% of domestic abuse cases actually led to prison sentences, so led to convictions and prison sentences, right? And now we've spoken about the other OCSE findings and research that it was, is it 57 or 58%
In
of women were
Kosovo,
victims?
it's 58.
58%, yeah. So when you think about it, when you compare the numbers, like, that is just, it is dangerously low, because if that many women are coming forward and reporting it and only 22% actually ended up in prison sentences, where's the rest? Where's the other 78%?
At home.
Well, what's happening to the other
continuing,
78% is the courts are simply issuing fines and suspended sentence, or even psychiatric evaluations, apparently. So it's okay when men have psychiatric issues, but not women, because when women have psychiatric issues, we're gaslit and we're told we're absolutely batshit crazy, right? But when men do it, they can use it as a way to get out actually harming, abusing and being violent to women, which, like, make it make sense. Pick one and stick to it. Some of the other things that this report found in the OSCE was that trials were experiencing huge, significant delays in procedure, and that nearly 24% of cases ended up in protection hearings. But they ended up in protection hearings. Okay, I'm going to try and break this down even further. They ended up in protection hearings, but a lot of them then failed at the last minute because they exceeded the statute of limitations. So the process of actually going through with restraining orders, bail conditions, and any other protective orders went over the time limit. And so therefore women were being left without that legal protection and being completely vulnerable as women, as victims. And so when prison sentences were issued, they only averaged at around 5 months. But the maximum prison time a perpetrator of domestic abuse can get in Kosovo is 3 years. And according to Albulina Hagiu, who was the justice minister, not one single perpetrator of domestic abuse has ever received the maximum sentence as of this report. Maybe today that's different, but as of this report, not a single perpetrator had actually received the maximum prison sentence. And those who received suspended prison sentences, so they weren't actually in prison, they were maybe on license or outside of prison, doing their custody in the community, they averaged out around 6 months. And then some received fines, which were around 350 euros. Now, 350 euros doesn't seem like a lot of money. I do think it's relatively small for harming, abusing and being violent towards women. But if you think about how low the salaries and wages are back home, 350 euros is a lot of money. Mm-hmm. I mean, here in England and Wales, I've seen perpetrators being fined £350.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's just mirroring the same kind of systemic issues as you get in the West, the same that we'd get back home. And it really just emphasizes this leniency in sentencing and just undermining the level of protection that's afforded to victims. Now, obviously, these reports and studies are back home, but I cannot emphasize enough how much this mirrors everything we see here in the West as well. Like, it is almost exactly the same. Like, there's not really much disparity when it comes to the level of prosecution here in the West. And that's the reality, isn't it? Because wherever you go, abuse and violence is a huge issue. Now, they do have programs, like rehabilitation programs for perpetrators that have been piloted back home with the emphasis on being therapeutic instead of like actually taking punitive accountability, right? So actually being held accountable by the courts, by the justice system. All that says to me, especially as someone who does this work every single day, working frontline with victims, it's almost the same, it's echoing what's happening here, is that we're consistently reinforcing like really light punishments and rehabilitative approaches to perpetrators consistently, time and time again. And so what are we expecting women to do?
Exactly. What do you expect when you push someone so far and you give them absolutely no way out, and the only thing they have left is to take matters into their own hands?
Yeah.
What do you then get?
Exactly. I really, really, really wanted to magically find some kind of research that showed the different crimes that these women were convicted for. There was nothing. I couldn't find anything. It was just purely just numbers that this was the amount of women, but didn't say anything about their crimes, because we know, I could, from research and studies done here in England and Wales, that a majority of the women who do make up the population, prison population, are victims, survivors of abuse and violence in some form.
Yeah.
And actually they've ended up with being criminalized by the system as a result of something that they've maybe been coerced to do by the perpetrator, or maybe it's been in violence resistance. Now, I guarantee you, even without the research, it's going to be very similar back home too. In fact, recently in Tower Hamlets, there was a study done around women who had been convicted for shoplifting. Do you know what the number one product was that they were actually shoplifting?
Baby formula.
Cowpole.
Cowpole. Yeah.
So these are the crimes that women are being criminalized for, because they don't have the correct access that they need to actually parent properly. And then when they don't have the access to parent in the right capacity, they're criminalized for it.
Yeah.
So you have to understand that this issue isn't just a superficial issue. Like, it's systemic, it's institutional, it's cultural, it's an issue in the community, in the wider community. It's an issue everywhere. You have to think, like, when it's only 1 in 5 cases that are leading to imprisonment, and even then it's only for short durations, like 5 months, what's that telling us? That the judicial system is telling women, is telling victims that domestic abuse and domestic violence remains a low priority, and they will always, time and time again, inadequately punish perpetrators and leaving victims exposed to further harm. And we haven't even got to the comments yet. And the reason why I wanted to kind of really discuss it, like, you know, in this way, is because we cannot just go into talking about women being incarcerated without understanding how the system really affects women and how much it works against women. Like, having just a couple of therapeutic programs for perpetrators, that's great. But without strong sentencing, they're going to fail to deter repeated perpetration.
Yeah. But in the same breath, it's more expensive to do that, and they have to allocate more resources. And when a system is created to benefit more men, why would they do that? I'm just, from my point of view, I think it's such a shame that we live in a system where it's pretty much all lined up for a man to succeed. And even if he does something which, like, inflict domestic abuse or gender-based violence in any form, then he still knows that, yes, he might get have to go to court, and yes, he might have to serve maybe a 5-month sentence or maybe just a fine, but we know in our community he will always be protected, not only by the system but by his own family and his friends, whereas the woman is always put down and shamed. And in that situation, you're not only putting in jeopardy her life with her kids, for example, and her custody situation with her kids, but you're also putting in jeopardy her mental health and kind of pushing her out of this out of the community, especially if you're in the diaspora, for example, and you haven't actually been brought up, or for example you've got nowhere else to go in the diaspora and you've married someone and you come all the way from Kosove or Shqipni, or Albania or Kosovo or wherever where there's Albanian communities, you're kind of left on your own. So again, you are left with no option, because the system doesn't work for women, it works for men. And this is kind of like putting a sugarcoat on, yes, like we are trying our best and we are creating the system just to make it seem that actually we give a shit when we actually don't.
And that bingo, because what women actually need is strong legal protection. They don't need token interventions. They don't need programs that just look good on the outside. They need strong legal protection, and they don't need a justice system that minimizes abuse and enables perpetration.
Exactly.
5 months is not a long enough sentence to hold anybody accountable.
5 months
how
is
in
a holiday.
How in any way does that say that we don't tolerate violence and abuse towards women? It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is this approach, and it sounds like we're just targeting back home, but I'm not. I'm only just simply going by these statistics because, you know, it's we almost have to slightly predict how these statistics show up in the diaspora because we don't have the research to go by. So this is why we're bringing this into it. But this current approach of low incarceration rates, low conviction rates, systemic delays, the failures that survivors are having, the lack of deterrence, it needs disrupting.
Yeah, it definitely does.
It needs disrupting. And okay, these programs are great. I know I work on these programs across London here in the UK, but they're not enough. We need to have a judicial structure that can uphold this level of perpetration. And our level of perpetration is not just through domestic abuse, it's through the wider community as well. It's through honor-based violence, it's through gender-based violence. There's so many different ways how we enable and uphold perpetration in our community. And we need a structure that's strong enough to hold perpetrators accountable.
No, I completely agree. Because at the end of the day, society doesn't run in any way successful without both men and women, especially women. Women are the ones me and Lejla are both feminists. Like, without
don't know if you'd figured that one out yet.
Without women, you've got absolutely jack shit. You're not going to get very far. And it's so unfortunate to see something like this and statistics, Sidomas statistics, because you kind of feel like, well, what's the point in even being a woman in Kosovo or even in the Albanian community? And it's the same in the diaspora, where in the diaspora there's this massive trend of like, don't call anyone outside of the culture. We cannot allow anyone to come in from outside of the culture to judge us and tell us how to do stuff. We have our own way of doing things. We are Albanian and we have to keep it like this. So it's incredibly dangerous, but and also at the same time it's fucking stupid, because without women, the Albanian community will go extinct. And I think I've said that millions of times.
Listen, without women everywhere, the whole world will go extinct. And I think we all know that.
I think me and you are betting on that anyways.
Like, come on. And what was interesting was I was trying to see if there was anything showing the conviction rates in Albania. but it was pretty much unavailable. So again, that shows us that there's this like significant gap in understanding how the justice system responds to these crimes. Because whilst reporting domestic abuse and violence incidences have increased over the years, and there's a better system, there's better access for women to report crime and to feel safer coming forward, we still don't have the research or reports to actually show the outcomes. But there was something in Exit News in 2021, which reported that 2,980 domestic abuse cases that had been reported in that year. Only 523, I can't get my words out this evening, only 523 had actually led to arrest.
And the others were pretty much...
Well, they would have been NFA. There would have been no further action, would have been let go of. So that is a 17.5% arrest rate. Now, remember that doesn't equate to a conviction. That's just an arrest, because it's very likely that a lot of those arrests would have been founded as NFA as well.
I'm just speechless.
Who's the system working for?
Men, of course.
Who's this? It's so unclear whether there's anything actually effective in place protecting victims and survivors and deterring perpetrators.
I think, for me personally, I think it's so clear that there is nothing.
Yeah, and the thing is I've heard a lot of people say this, like, oh, you know, we don't have the studies because it's not an issue. No, that is actually the complete opposite. The lack of transparency around this only suggests that there is this huge failure, this huge underreporting for victims and survivors, and the huge institutional failure when it comes to prosecution and court levels. That doesn't tell me that because the studies aren't available, or the research and the reports aren't available, that we don't have a problem. Actually, that makes me worry even more, because it shows us that women in our community don't have a voice at all when it comes to these issues.
Yeah.
And we are actually overlooking the real impact of domestic abuse, of gender-based violence, and how the policies really hinder advocacy for victims and survivors.
Yeah. And it's also telling, it also matches up to the statistics of how many actual like civil servants and lawyers and judges and all these people that are there to actually protect these laws, or even people that put laws into place and create laws in the government. It matches up with the fact that there isn't a lot. Not that there isn't a lot, but almost there isn't. There's such a small number of women in those positions, and it matches up to for me, it just makes complete sense as to why the whole justice system is failing. Not that I think you need to have a woman to make people open up their own eyes, because I think you just have to be a fucking human being with logical sense to do that.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, we know, not only just from the Western political situation, especially in the US and what's going on there, but we know that same pattern and trend is going to automatically be happening in Kosovo and Albania, in North Macedonia, in the Arbëresh community, wherever they are. We know that applies because men only think about men, and without an actual female present, they're never going to think about the opposite sex, because that's not that. Unfortunately, I don't want to get too much into a feminist rant, but I just truly believe that.
Excuse me, are we not a feminist podcast?
I know. But I don't want to seem like we're just attacking Kosovo, because we're not. But
it's not about that. It's discussing the issue, and actually, like you said, like whilst these statistics show the issue back home, the fact of the matter is this is mirrored throughout the community in the diaspora,
exactly. Everywhere. But because I have seen statistics about women in positions of power, and yes, we've got a woman as a president, but we don't have a lot of women anywhere else, especially in the legislation part, where they're actually putting all these laws through for domestic abuse and gender-based violence. You don't actually have women sitting there. You don't have women leading those talks in the government in the ministry, you don't have anyone fighting that corner because it's all being filled by men, and men don't care. Sorry, not sorry.
Well, you don't have to be sorry. That's the truth. There's no need to be sorry about that. That is the truth. Anywhere you go, the patriarchy, misogyny wins. And it's just like you're saying, like, it sounds like we're targeting back home. We're not, because whilst there's no official stats to track maybe these statistics in the diaspora, or how many, if there are Albanian women in prison, or how many convictions exist in cases of domestic abuse and violence against Albanian women, and not just by Albanian men, because we get this all the time, don't we? Oh my God, you hate Albanian men. It's like, are you forgetting that Albanian women don't just date and marry and live with men in our culture?
Yeah.
They also date, marry, live men and people outside of our culture, outside of our community. Like, that's the truth.
Yeah.
But we don't have any statistics. Yeah, like, we don't have any statistics to show us the real level of vulnerability that women in our community are being subjected to.
Yeah. And we see it time and time again, especially in the diaspora, where you've got men leading initiatives, men doing all this kind of stuff in the diaspora, and doing all of these like activities for families and men and blah blah blah. Make me sick. But you don't have anything for women. The beast has been unleashed today.
Yeah, and the thing is, and this is exactly why it's so inherently misogynistic and reductive, right? Because to portray vulnerable women, let's go back to the video. To portray vulnerable women, many of whom are survivors of violence and abuse, of systematic neglect, or like as criminals without proper context, that's crazy. How can you do that? How can you do that knowing the suffering of women in our community? And even from like a feminist perspective, from an intersectional feminist perspective, this isn't just misogyny. This is actually about how compounded marginalization of women who sit in this intersection of ethnicity, of class, of migration, of trauma, because Albanian women, particularly those in the diaspora, carry such a huge weight of cultural silence, of that institutional failure, of gendered expectations. This is what we talk about day in, day out on the pod. And when these women are criminalized, if they are here in the diaspora, the narrative will rarely actually account for the abuse, for the coercion, for the survival-based decisions that shape their path. And it completely erases how the system, how states, how legal frameworks have failed to protect them.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. I mean, I just wanted to add that it's in relation to this this interview, this little documentary that they've done. There was a case of a woman that actually did unalive herself in the prison, and the systems that were there to protect, and the organizations that were there to protect her mental health and everything, knew about her mental health struggles but did nothing. So they just sat there, watched her, and she ended up doing what she thought was the only way that she could get help, because there was nothing there to support her. And this is the thing, where if a woman, a lot of these women in these situations, like you said, they're there because a lot of them have probably protected themselves, and they've ended up there because of the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And they know that then when they go home, it's the repeat. It's kind of the repeat. So it makes it doesn't take you to be so smart and to have a doctorate to kind of go through what that person's thinking. Because I probably would have done the same thing. Why would I go back to something that I know is just going to be a continuous cycle? I'm not getting anywhere, and my life's not getting any better. You know, the situation isn't any better because I'm in the same dark hole that I was before I even came here. And I only came here because I tried to change the situation for the better of my kids or myself. But I'm going back to the same situation. So it's a massive failure of the justice system. massive failure. Massive.
And that is exactly what we would call the weaponization of the perfect victim, the worthy victim. So a woman is only worthy of being a victim if she conforms, if she's silent, if she's pure, if she's endured, if she's that figure. If you look at domestic abuse campaigns, because I have a big fucking issue with this in domestic abuse campaigns, it's always women in the corner like this, as if like that's all that victims do, which is so not true. Because when women resist or break down, like you're saying, when it's like their mental health is so impacted by all of the abuse and violence and shame and the silencing they've experienced, and they fight back, they're suddenly cast as dangerous and they're difficult, and now they deserve to be punished. And that's the kind of portrayal that is, it's not just dishonest, right? It's actually a form of violence in itself, because it silences the real stories of survival behind this criminal label. And all we're doing consistently with women is reinforcing that cultural narrative where women are either saints, and our community loves it, either saints or sinners.
Yeah.
We can't be any of these 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional complex human beings in between.
No.
We can't be shaped by pain. We can't be shaped by injustice. We can't be shaped by survival. We can only be this perfect victim trope.
Yeah. That's basically it. And it's no different to the period of when women were put at the stake. It's no different. We haven't actually progressed that far if we're thinking about it.
I think I would have been the first on the stake, if I'm honest with you.
I would just join you for the fun of it. I would not stay by myself.
It's more fun there anyway. But we're laughing and joking, but actually the truth of the matter is, this perfect victim trope is so vital here, especially when we're discussing like, Albanian women in terms of that intersectional oppression, because that perfect victim, you have to understand, is a complete myth.
Yeah.
It's a societal expectation that women need to be meek, they need to be a wallflower just to be believed. But we know that when women, regardless of their personality type, when they come forward, they're immediately shamed, immediately blamed, immediately judged. So it doesn't matter. A woman can't win, even if she is the perfect victim, quote unquote.
It's such a shame. It's such a shame. It almost makes you feel very lost, and just it makes you feel really useless and powerless, because it's clear as day that the problem is so big. To actually get it fixed, you first have to have your voice heard, and to have your voice heard, you have to shout it to the rooftops, like we're doing with Trime, because that's literally what we're doing.
Yeah, but no, but don't you dare do that though. Don't you dare do that. You can't cry. You can't be angry.
I know.
No, that you dare. Yeah. If you do that, you're crazy. You have to suffer in silence. You know that.
Yeah, I know.
You have to suffer in silence, and you can't have a past. Yeah. You can't fight back.
No,
you can't do any of that, because the second that you do have a voice, the second that you do express your rage, which is so valid, you are a threat. You are a complete threat. And that is why this perfect victim trope is such a deeply misogynistic, dangerous viewpoint to have of women, in particular marginalized women.
Yeah. And it's also why I just would like to say, it's also why when women are actually, when their lives are ended by their perpetrators, it's why everyone decides they've got a voice, because a life has been taken away.
Yep.
But that situation happened because of 10 years worth of domestic abuse.
Exactly.
So
because no one spoke about it on a daily basis. So what do you think? What, the outrage is only okay when it's sensationalized?
Yeah. And now that we've got women in, sorry to cut you off, now that we've got women in these institutions, because they actually survived, they're still fucking penalized. They're still fucking penalized. So whether you are buried or whether you are alive, it doesn't matter, because you're still the bad person in this whole game. You're not the
Yeah.
right one. You're not the like you said, you're not the obedient one. You're not the perfect victim. You're none of that, because whether you're alive or dead, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And that's the reality, right? Is that many women you'll see in prison, and this isn't just in our community, this is across the globe. Many women you'll see in prison are not criminals in the way that people assume they're criminals. They're survivors. They're survivors of domestic abuse. They're survivors of gender-based violence, of coercion, of poverty, of state neglect, and trafficking, you name it. But they're not the perfect victim, right? Because they shoplifted, because they fought back, because they're too loud, too angry, too traumatized. And so society punishes them.
Yeah.
And it's not just
yeah.
punishing them by prison time, because this goes beyond just like it being in prison. This goes in every single day in women's lives, and being silenced and being shamed and being abandoned by the people that they thought were going to be there to help and support them.
Exactly.
But when they don't fit this perfect victim narrative, all of that goes away.
Exactly.
And what people don't understand is when we constantly talk about this perfect victim narrative, we're completely erasing women who stayed, I use that term very loosely, in abusive relationships because they had no way out.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we go a little bit deeper, if we talk about women who have been criminalized, who have hurt others maybe, but they were hurting and nobody ever gave them the tools to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Women committed crimes, as I said, you know, the number one product that was being stolen here in London was Calpol, because they're being failed by the fucking system, because no one's helping them. No one's giving them the financial resources and the access to parent appropriately.
Imagine.
So women...
Go on, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, like, women end up carrying all these complexities
Yeah.
in their identities, and we somehow still have to show up every single day as soft-spoken, as being perfect. But like, what the fuck? How do you expect women to be in any way capable of doing anything if you are not giving them the right access to what they need?
Oh, you can't expect it. And also, this is why systems are now crumbling. This is why there's this whole like male loneliness epidemic, like just stupid stuff that men come up with. But also, this is why birth rates are down. This is why women, I mean, in the West, women are now choosing to say, actually, I don't want to have a child and I don't want to get married. Like, what's the point? But that same trend is going to go to Kosove. Because I hear it day in and day out. I hear it from my family, like, oh, like my daughter doesn't want to get married. Oh, my daughter just wants to get her doctorate and she wants just to work and she wants to be independent. Yes. Yes, that's what you want. That's what you want.
Well, yeah,
but
because like what we do is we hold women, and in particular those of us from marginalized ethnicities, to ridiculously, stupidly impossible standards. And by doing that, we're completely abandoning women as a whole, but then women who are more vulnerable, who are victims and survivors, because by doing that, you're participating. I'm sorry to say this, whether you like it or not, whether it triggers you or not, you're participating in a system that rewards compliance and punishes women's resistance. Point blank period. Point blank period.
yes.
You are.
Yes. And also that's why we're all labeled trans, crazy. Like we've had
exactly. And that goes back to my point where it was okay to give men psychiatric rehabilitation for violent and abusive crimes, but if women need the same access to mental health support, they're crazy.
How does that concept work? You know, the whole system is like dealing with a 4-year-old because you just don't, it just makes no logical sense at all. But again, it makes sense because of the patriarchy, and it makes sense because the patriarchy was set up by men for men, and it will always be for men, but it actually doesn't even work for men anymore. It just works for capitalism. So actually, it was
which
up,
largely does work for men, but also it doesn't work for men
yeah.
at the same time. I know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. But we're just, it just women are just unfortunately part of a system that a man decided that, hey, I just want to control a female as much as I can because she has the power to create life and I don't. So I fucking hate her and I'm jealous of her. So I'm going to put her through the system so I can make sure that she's always vulnerable and she will always be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I can do exactly what I need to do to make sure that she makes my life easier and I have an easier life going through jobs, school, education, whatever it is. It's easier for me. And that also means I've got a slave at home, but I also have my mum at home, but I also have a teacher to my kids, and I also have a doctor, and I also have a lifeguard, a firewoman, everything to my children, so that when I go to work and when I come home, I don't need to lift a finger, because actually my life needs to be easy because I work so much. But a woman, she has it so easy because she has to birth, and she's got that instinct. She's built with that instinct. Fucking bullshit. Sorry. Welcome to the
Sometimes
podcast, guys.
we just got to wind Leo up and then just let her go.
Don't.
But that's
do
the
not
reality, isn't
tempt
it?
me.
No, but that's the reality, isn't it? Because there's this huge double standards that even when women are victims, it's like, well, if she was really a victim, why didn't she just leave? Why does she act like that? Or like, why didn't she fight back? And then when she fights back, she's just as bad as the perpetrator.
Yeah,
And there is no
back,
grace afforded to women, as if we also aren't messy, angry, scared.
Mm-hmm.
Even if women are in these life states, even if they have been convicted of crimes, they're still deserving of justice.
Yeah. It's as if,
regardless of any life state they're in, women are deserving of safety and justice.
Yeah, 100%. I was just going to add to your point. It's as if women are not human and we are this alien creature. And that's why we're treated the way we are. Sorry, that just went a whole different way, but that's how that's how I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately.
How's everyone feeling so far after hearing us?
I'm excited to go to the comments.
I think before we even go to the comments, because in order for us to even touch the comments, I know that Leo is fired up for the comments, and believe me, I am too. So these women who are being convicted of crimes, I wonder what the pathway to rehabilitation looks like for them. I know what it looks like in England and Wales, and it's not great. I'll be honest, it's not great here. Because women who commit offences often have like deeply intertwined stories of systemic oppression, of trauma, of survival under patriarchy, misogyny, and it's not the same as male perpetrators. Male perpetrators, like, their crimes are often linked to power and control dynamics, right? And that's because of male privilege. So when you're saying, like, you know, men are susceptible to the patriarchy, they absolutely are. They absolutely are susceptible to be victims to it. But they are also the ones who are upholding this male privilege. And female perpetrators frequently have this really complex history that actually started off being marked by victimization. And that includes domestic abuse, it includes sexual violence, it includes poverty, it includes neglect. And so what women actually truly need, which is what ideally you would want to see as a form of rehabilitation, is trauma-informed care. It's understanding, it's actually treating this form of rehabilitation from an intersectional feminist perspective, knowing that many women who have offended have experienced extensive trauma, and a lot of that trauma would have come through deep-rooted violent misogynistic practices, cultures, communities. So you can't rehabilitate women the same way you would rehabilitate male perpetrators. It's not possible. They have two completely different life experiences.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of rehabilitation, because I did do some research, it doesn't exist for women in Kosovo, unfortunately.
Shock fucking horror. Is it ever going to exist? Like, are we ever going to have an episode we go like, oh my god, look at all this research we found?
If they I'm telling you now, if that day ever comes, I'm buying fireworks. I'm just
Yeah,
gonna,
I swear.
I'm just literally,
I swear.
I'm gonna light up the sky with fireworks. But it doesn't exist. And what's even more concerning, because we know the situation of, and this is how it will link, but we know the situation of medical equipment for mothers and expecting mothers and, women in general. Ultrasound machines sometimes or maybe never actually exist in prisons. So if a woman is actually expecting, she doesn't have anyone to turn to. And we already know that the limitation of equipment for laboring mothers doesn't really exist a lot, like it does in the UK, for example, like the epidural and all this kind of stuff. That a woman can actually get through it. It doesn't exist in hospitals unless you're going to a private hospital like the American hospital. But in these systems, in these institutions, there is nothing. Maybe one ultrasound machine that's probably from the Yugoslavian era doesn't actually help a woman, because what if a woman does actually go into labor and needs to come to Pristina or something? There's no safety net. There's no, like I said, no workshops, no therapy, nothing.
And you know what, you bring up such an important point, because women are the primary caregivers majority, like the global majority of women are the primary caregivers, right? So when we're looking at it from a rehabilitation point of view, imprisonment and rehabilitation without support for their parental roles and parental needs disrupts the whole family structure. And we talk about our community like, oh my God, they're ruining the family structure and blah, 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 blah. But you're doing it yourselves, because you're not giving women what they need to rehabilitate. You're further traumatizing them, their children, just by perpetuating cycles of harm. And that's why gender sensitive rehabilitation, as you're saying, what you're saying is it needs to include a support system that unifies the family structure.
Exactly. And another good piece of research that links to how vulnerable women are actually in Kosovo is that only 18% of women actually own their own property in Kosovo, and it's not by accident. It's on purpose. It's definitely on purpose, because it's more of a cultural expectation that women don't inherit or don't actually own anything in Kosovo. So when you think about it, if women don't own anything, they don't own any property that they can fall back on, they don't have any inheritance, they don't have any door to go through, and they find themselves in this situation, and God forbid you're pregnant, you've got 9 months to go, and let's say you're in there for a whole year. First of all, you don't even know who to call because you've got no one. Second of all, you know that you have a higher chance of actually being unalived by your own labor in this situation.
Yeah.
So what have you done? What have you done? You have sentenced. Sorry, you have sentenced.
We're getting passionate.
Woman,
we're getting so passionate now.
Yeah, I know. You have sentenced a woman to her own unaliving. That's all the system has done.
To her own living hell.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's why, from a rehabilitation standpoint, female perpetrators require rehabilitation that goes beyond any standard criminal justice response. That rehabilitation cannot happen for women in those conditions. That's not possible. We need something that promotes healing, that reduces recidivism, and that challenges that patriarchal and misogynistic system that contributed to a woman's victimization in the fucking first place. Sorry, because I promised I wouldn't get riled up in this one, but here I am. So when I said at the beginning of this, I support women's rights and wrongs, this is what I mean. This is what I mean, because women are consistently penalized and criminalized for shit that they're victimized for in the first place.
I just have to take a deep breath because it's so sad. It just makes me so angry for a country that's come so far, and not just even Kosovo, but even Albania, for both countries to have come so far and developed so much.
Honestly, and I know that these studies that we were discussing were back home, but I need to emphasize that it's not much different here in the West. I see it every day supporting victims. It's not much different here.
Which is why femicide has been ruled a pandemic. And, it's the same pretty much around the whole world. It's just so shit. But this is why Trime exists.
This is why we exist. This is why we're here. Now, should we get on to the comments? Are you ready?
Yes. Let's get to the comments. So I decided to make them like really big so we can see them. Everyone can see them and see what we're dealing with. But there is just a disclaimer. There is a lot of misogyny in these comments.
And violence as well.
And violence. And there is a lot of R-rated comments in here. I don't know what the hell is the obsession with R-rated stuff in our community, but there's a lot of it in here, and it's all linked with, obviously, with gender-based abuse, really, because it is all abuse. So it's abusive, it's misogynistic. We're gonna laugh about some stuff, but that's because that's our trauma response. Unfortunately, we don't know how else to process
also
this.
it's some people just deserve to be laughed at.
Yeah, exactly.
Point blank period.
Exactly. Well, not some, but a 99% of men.
We're supposed to be calm in this one, Leo. We're supposed to be calm.
Let me just
Womp womp. That's never gonna happen.
literally. So Orte 007, German flag and Albanian flag. I love that. I love the creativity of it. It's just so nice. Pse nuk I vetni për qa janë shku në burg, me mujt edhe 80% të grove I qoj këtu të mushin mend pak. So Orte's problem is with himself, and he, unfortunately, what you'll see with a lot of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lejla, unfortunately what you'll see from a lot of men that put these kind of comments in here, their biggest issue is they just hate women. And they
are the
fact,
rotten fruit in our culture. Let's just call it what it is. They are the rotten fruit in our community.
They are, and they hate when they don't get their own way with a woman. And I mean, like, if they had the opportunity to get it by force, they would. That's the kind of people Orte is
and
portraying.
Like, when you're saying that 80% of women deserve to be in prison, or fantasizing about being, because some of the other comments were about being in there as a prison guard to exert power over women, like, it's not even a shock value or trolling. It's actually just a mirror. It's a mirror of all of the messaging that they've heard growing up. It just completely reflects what men truly think about women. Yeah. Some don't say out loud, and some, like Arte, do.
Yeah. And like the next one, which is nickname name 5, which is just literally Baja Pelchem Memshti in Chidburg Filme.
Yeah.
So,
and you have to think about, why do they feel so comfortable saying it now?
Because who's actually going to tell them
Who's
off?
stopping them? Who's stopping them?
Who's stopping them? No one.
Because the levels of misogyny in our community only reinforces the idea that women exist to be controlled, disciplined, punished, especially if they step outside of the narrow lines that we assign to women in our community.
Yeah, but also women in our community are seen as objects. So they're seen there to only satisfy the needs of a man. So their whole fantasy is based around, well, you know, I want to go in because I've got free access and no one's going to stop me. It's so dangerous. It's such a dangerous comment to put in there first of all and then laugh about, because I don't think these men, well, I actually do think these men understand what the fuck they're writing on there, because
Yeah,
you don't
they
have
do.
to be.
That's why they're saying
Yeah.
it, because they feel free and confident
Yeah.
to do so.
Yeah, they understand exactly what they're saying, and they wish they were put in that position. They just wish. But
also, whilst we're talking about this, and the documentary is about obviously women in prison, in a way, when I was watching it, I was kind of thinking of it metaphorically as well, because for many women, it's not actual like a real prison, like with real prison bars. Sometimes it's quite literally being told you're too emotional, you're too weak, you're too much, being laughed at, being ignored, being followed home, men not saying, taking no, men not, and when you don't give consent, like it's all of these things. So whilst this is, we're actually looking at these women's real lived experiences in prison, it's also can be used in a metaphorical way.
yeah, exactly.
And then on top of that, being portrayed as a monster.
Yeah, exactly. Albanian flag just commented, it's because they do not get held accountable, and unfortunately these types of things are encouraged and taught at home, which is just disgusting. The thing is I think me and you, Lejla, being taught at home is one thing, and then the whole culture and system being this way is another thing. I think,
you know what, that is a whole topic in on itself that we haven't even touched yet, because so many parents will say, no, not my son's going to treat women with respect, he's not going to be misogynistic. How do you know that? Just because you try and raise your sons in one certain way not to be misogynistic, that does not mean that they're not susceptible to it. Because the second you put your children out into this world, into this largely patriarchal, misogynistic world, guess who's going to be the first ones to conform to it? Boys.
Yeah.
But that is a topic, a whole different conversation in on itself that we will touch on. I promise you we will touch on that.
We will probably...
I promise you we'll touch on that.
Yeah. Aurora said they always have backup. That's why they speak so much shit. Yep, we know that. The backup of the system. There's also a lot of transphobia in our community. Anyways, it's just disgusting. One comment that actually both of us liked was sa shumë e kanë ndjenin e burgut në përshtëpia të veta që to bile femna pushon psychologically and physically. I don't want to butcher like the word for psychology in Albanian.
Psychikisht.
Anyways, let's just move on before someone makes a meme out of us.
Oh my God.
But that is so true, because these women's homes are prisons in them, in it, like themselves, and they're actually in a place where they've only got other women around them. They at least have that pushim pak and crew, but because the prisons aren't set up to help these women the way they need to be helped, it also just backfires as well. So it's a catch-22. Honestly, it's a catch-22.
I remember about a good few years ago, I watched a documentary, and it was like, it was aired here in the UK on Channel 4, but it was a documentary of prisons in America. And there was one woman on there, and I'll never forget her. And she'd been a lifelong victim of domestic abuse by her husband. And she ended up unaliving her husband, because there's certain things we can and can't say because it's YouTube. She ended up unaliving her husband because he started abusing the children. He started SAing the children. And she was like, that was her point of no return. So whilst she endured it herself, her point of no return was the abuse that her children were facing. And the interviewer asks her about her experience in prison, and she says, my life in here is more free than it was outside. She's like, I've never been more free than I am here in prison. And you have to let that sit for a minute. That for many women like her, a life in prison is easier than being with their abuser. And that's not a justification for the prison system, by the way, at all. It's more of like an indictment of the world outside of it, where the world, where safety is so out of reach for women because the systems fail to protect survivors, where survivors are so broken because the system is absent, because I'd say the system is broken, but it's not, that I would just be paying lip service. The system isn't broken. It's just not set up to support women.
Nope.
And that's what confinement feels like. So what this really says about our society, when women feel safer in a prison cell instead of their own home, what does that really say? That for her, for example, let's just think of this woman that I'm talking about in this documentary. She didn't see it as a punishment.
No.
It's the first time. It was the first time in her life that she was actually locked away from danger.
Yeah. She, for the first time in her life, she could actually sleep peacefully.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that prisons, we all know that they are dangerous.
Yeah, because we're not glorifying prison or incarceration.
We're not.
At all. It's
we're
just
not telling everyone to go.
No, not at all. Not even in the slightest. Like, we would 0 out of 10 do not recommend. Do not get yourself in prison. But it's the acknowledgement of how deeply the world has failed women before they've even reached a courtroom. That most women aren't offered therapy. Most aren't even believed to begin with, and end up becoming criminalized for their own survival, for depending on themselves to defend themselves.
So in one way, for a lot of women, when they reach that point of no return, they know exactly where they're going, and you know what? Fuck it, I'm happy. Because what is the alternative? What is the alternative, for example, for that woman to allow the perpetrator to abuse her own kids?
Yeah.
What is the alternative?
Exactly. And when the world is so conditioned to believe women have to be perfect victims, again, going back to have a perfect victim trope, to be quiet, gentle, not allowed to be angry, not allowed to be messy, what about those who fall outside of this trope? Those women who don't appear as perfect victims end up being punished twice, once by the abuser and then again by the system.
Yeah.
So that comment is like such an open wound for so many women.
No, 100% it is.
And that's what happens when the world refuses to see women as full human beings, because we're punished for our pain, we're punished for our we can't do right for doing wrong, right? We're punished for our pain, punished for our silence, because when you don't report abuse and then it comes out, they say, why didn't you report it? So you're punished for being silent. And then when you do report it, they don't believe you, they judge you, they shame you, so then you're punished for your survival. And then if we're going as far as women in prison who are criminalized for their violence resistance, because how dare you resist? Now we're going to punish you. We're going to put you in prison for it.
Yeah, exactly. We're just going to continuously punish you, because you're not the perfect victim. You're not the perfect example.
Yeah.
It's such a shame. But again, Haki, I would work here for free. Kisha gratis guardian. Of course you would. I think one of the things that I found really dangerous is these two here. Abranoin burakto, and then basically pomvien catch me methonship, but pordonoin ktovla. For me, it's such a dangerous comment. Because now you are shifting the whole power to a woman that doesn't even have power. The power sits with you. The power sits with you. So you're fantasizing that. And what's even more worrying is the likes on those two comments. Morjukov, whoever liked that.
Yeah, literally. And you know when we talk about more, that's real more.
Yeah, that is real more.
That is fantasizing about being in an institutional building
Yeah,
because you know that you have that ultimate power over the women there, and then you think it's funny.
yeah, exactly. And then Alma said Sajuna Perfamra, and then Lule Drenica, Lule, very disappointed in you. Psejna Kushnug Denon me Burg Prechefit. How can you make that kind of comment when the system is so shit? The system isn't built to help women. Of course, they've ended up there because they've had no support. They've had nothing to fall back on. What they've done is protect themselves the only way they know how to. And also, let's not be stupid. But a lot of these women are there almost also probably because they've protected their own children.
Well, and the truth is that for most women who end up in prison, they were already metaphorically in a cell before they got there.
Yeah.
They were. And again, it's all the things we talk about in the pod, metaphorically in a cell by their homes, by their abusers, by families, by the silence, by the shame, by the community. The list is fucking endless. It is like this eternal hell.
Yeah.
But even then, right? Even in the worst moment in a woman's life state, women are still worthy of dignity. They're still worthy of care, and they're still worthy of a future.
Yeah.
Especially when justice isn't being served appropriately.
Yeah. Especially also because men receive it. Fucking men receive it.
Men get psychiatric rehabilitation for being violent and abusive towards women. Women get told that 80% of us deserve to be in prison. Men get support. Women get told that 80% of them should be in prison.
I've got my own ideas of what men should receive. But you know. Anyways, I think diamant with loads of diamonds. Që kur një tonë se ki pa, kur mos dolce. Again, that's the supporter of this system. That's the reason why the system doesn't move. How do we know? Well, we do know. That could be someone working in the government. It could be anyone.
Could be anyone. Perpetrators are everywhere.
Yeah.
Like when I see in the comments and people are like, oh, this happens only in certain parts of Kosovo or certain parts of Albania. I'm like, do you think that abuse has borders, that perpetrators get to Tirana or Pristina and they're like, oh, better not perpetrate here because I'm in the city. Oh, I beg you, drop me out. That is not how perpetration works.
No. Alien blood. Mesazh për shtetin nëse mbushet burgo muin me mi prun shpitam. Again, it's objectifying
the sexual violence in these comments are actually, they're vile. They're vile. And what is this obsession? What is this obsession to turn to sexual violence? And I really need men to ask themselves that. Why is your immediate go-to to turn to sexual violence towards women?
Yeah.
Are you not embarrassed?
Kur e lyp e gjanë se nuk të shtinën burg para syje, s'ka lidhje këto a burgo për burra a për gra. Do the crime, do the time. Not your average Kosovan. No, obviously not.
I know. And the reality is when we talk about, I know this is a bit of a niche subject that we brought to the table today because probably not many people would have even thought to talk about this. But when we do talk about women in prison, we have to start with the men who put them there and the state that failed them, the state that failed to protect them, and also the culture that taught them that their pain was just part and parcel of being a woman. Like, we don't need to punish women any further. We need a revolution in how we see women and how we hear them and how we actually allow them to live freely.
Yeah. Sarah Phillips said rehabilitation does not work. It doesn't work because it doesn't exist in unfortunately in Kosovo.
But and Sarah's in particular talking about here in the West as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's a valid point. It goes across all cultures, wherever you go. Rehabilitation for perpetrators who don't want to change doesn't work.
Yeah. Again, sexual violence. Elir Osmani 995. Lum ata gardian që I run këto s'ka nevoj mu martu heq valla se as s'ka nevoj me pagu hotel as sen krejt free babo. So
I don't know about...
The thing is we read these out because they are as stupid as they sound. We read them out because a lot of these people put these comments here and they never think that two girls that co-host Trime will ever read them out with their names and everything and talk about them. A lot of men feel invincible because the system makes them invincible.
Yeah, as someone said earlier, no one's calling them out for it.
Yeah, no one's calling them out for it. And they, obviously they know they can just chat as much shit as possible and not get any clap back. But we've also had a comment from Christina Lynch on YouTube. You ladies definitely were the catalyst.
Have we got our first YouTube comment?
Yeah.
How exciting.
For me coming forward on my abuse after 6 entire years of borderline agoraphobia because of my ex.
Oh, wow. Well done.
Well done, Christina. We're so proud of you.
Very.
Well done.
You should be proud of yourself too.
Yeah. And you should 100%. Be proud that you chose yourself and you chose your own life over someone else. Because fuck that. Yep. You've only got one life.
Literally.
Look, at
the end of the day, I think you can all see the comments are pretty much one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about... Sorry, Leah.
A lot of them are just sexual violence, and I laugh because it's so stupid. I'm not laughing because I find it funny, because it's not fucking funny in any situation. But I'm laughing because it's just dumb.
I think when we talk about the whole mare in our community, this is the stuff that people should feel ashamed about.
Yeah,
it's these conversations that these largely men are having in the comments that they're making towards women and girls. That's what's mare. So I think that might be a good place to end it, so we don't keep re-traumatizing people over and over again for the rest of the night.
Well, I think me and you are just traumatized to the max. So for us,
I promise you, once the camera's off and the mics are off, me and Leo sleep like babies.
Yeah, Pasha zotin can arshit. We which are dying okay. Long time ago.
But just a quick note before we do head off, we are very soon going to be launching our vlog series here on YouTube. If you're over on TikTok, please make sure you're following us on YouTube. That will next week or the week after. I can't remember what the launch date is for that, but next week or the week after, we will be launching our vlog series where we are vlogging our lives behind the scenes, because as Leo said, everyone thinks we're so traumatized we never actually enjoy our lives, when it's the complete opposite of that. So we thought we would let you in that part of our lives, and also just to document our journey from being here with you guys to actually a full-blown organization, because we've got some exciting things that are happening behind the scenes, and we've also next week got something very exciting that's happening. We're not going to tell you just yet until it happens, but you're all going to have to stick around to find out. User 7151. I'm not reading all those numbers. Do you have somewhere we can write into? Yes, we do. If you go into the link in our bio on TikTok, there is like a link tree link, and there will be forms on there to write to us, like whether you want to send us a story, whether you want to subscribe to our newsletters or any up and coming events that we've got going on. Just head over to the link in our bio.
If you have something that won't fit the form characters, then you can just send it directly to us at info@trime.co.uk. info@trime.co.uk. But that same email is on our link tree, so you can just email us directly there. I did want, because we promised that we would respond to that comment. What is the one thing you would tell yourself if you had the chance to, from Black Flag?
Run, go on, you go first.
Bitch, run.
No.
No. What would I tell myself? I think we covered this in we both covered this in our podcast. But I think the one thing I would tell myself is, don't stress so much. Life is going to work out the best way possible. Don't be so scared of taking chances. Listen to yourself before you listen to anyone, and don't let your culture determine what you do. And you're gonna find your sister soul in life, and you are also Lejla, aka Lejla, and you're also gonna find a great partner that only elevates your life and doesn't actually make you mute. But the number one thing I would tell my younger self is just es propora, 2 fingers up, fuck everyone else. Es propora. I'm just, guys, if you know the podcast, I say it how it is. I don't sugarcoat it. Just keep walking and fuck everyone else at the church. That's my main message to myself.
The church. Mic drop. Mine would be just, it would be more around accepting every single aspect and intersection of my identity. Oh my God, did you see that orb? Just accepting every single part about me and my identity, and that I didn't need to be scared or ashamed of any of it. I just needed to absolutely wholeheartedly accept myself and love myself for who I am.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. And on that note, I think it's time that we go to bed. We've had a very long, busy and exciting week.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
And when I tell you we have something really exciting to share with you all next week, Thursday.
I know.
Gagged.
Just before we go off, if you're in London, if you're in the UK, London, we've got our poetry workshop coming up at the end of June.
Yes.
The tickets are now live. The only limited amount of spots. So those tickets will get you your spot. We also have our next episode with our guest coming out next week, Friday.
Yes, we do. Yes,
so please tune into that, because me and Lejla, it's the first time that I felt so much in awe of Emily. So please tune into that episode. And we've got loads of other things coming up. I can't wait for everyone to know.
I know. So we're going to stop being annoying now, and also probably actually do the typical YouTuber thing. If you don't mind giving us a like, a thumbs up, sharing this content with other people, subscribing or following us on TikTok, and keep up to date. We've also got our website where you can subscribe to our newsletter, which will be the most up-to-date way of staying
on
informed
point
of what we're doing. Anyway, we need to go because we are absolutely exhausted. We need to go and sleep. I hope you all have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you all very soon.
Bye, guys, and enjoy your Bayram. Bye.
Oh, but hi, Baydami would even say that.
Yeah,
oh
I
my
know.
God, we're the worst hosts. Well, but hi, Baydami. I hope you all have a lovely weekend.
Can Knatchno, Hane, Pinne, Knatchno. Be good though.